I was born in the Soviet Union. My family literally had to give up the apartment that we lived in. I just think of my parents in the USSR raising kids. I can't conceive how much sacrifice and work that took.
How do you come up with a big idea?
2017, I stumbled into crypto working on a side project. Ethereum started gaining traction. I thought that I had a unique approach that it was worthwhile for me to go and pursue it. And I had this Eureka moment that there's a way to build a data structure that tracks time.
Anatoly Yakovenko is the creator of Solana, one of the fastest growing blockchains in the world.
As CEO of Solana Labs, he's driving Web3 innovation, including the launch of the Solana Seeker,
A smartphone built for the crypto era.
Why would Solana launch a mobile phone?
Mobile was like my baby. There is an opportunity to make something better for users and an opportunity to make something for developers.
Why should you not buy an iPhone this year and get a Solana Seeker?
Because a large part of the world is not stuck in iPhone land. Apple and Google will eventually add crypto support. Until they add it natively, it's an opportunity to onboard a bunch of crypto users to a new platform.
What made you want to become successful?
I had to, between child, job, and side project, pick two. I quit my job and my wife is working and supporting us. My wife really pushed me to take the lead.
People say that Solana is just for meme coins.
Apple makes almost $0 from the iOS App Store. The vast majority of the revenue comes from games. Meme coins are kind of that silly, dumb, casual stuff that pays for the infrastructure.
How do you deal with FUD on a personal level when all the haters come out to celebrate your downfall?
So, I was born in the FUD. It was just like...
69% of the people who watch this podcast have not subscribed. If you enjoy this show, if it provides value to you in one way, shape, or form, can I please ask you a little favor? Can you click that subscribe button, give this video a like, and leave a comment down below? It helps this show more than you can imagine. My goal is to bring the absolute biggest and brightest people on this channel, and the best way to get there is to have all of us rally together and build the When Shift Happens family. Thank you. This conversation is supported by Jupiter, the most used decentralized trading platform on Solana and the largest DAO in the world. Bitwise Asset Management, the crypto specialist asset manager with more than $10 billion in client assets and more than 30 crypto solutions across ETFs, index funds, alpha strategies, staking, and more. 3. A scalable layer 1 blockchain that's fast, secure, and affordable, built by previous Facebook developers, and that delivers the benefits of Web3 with the ease of Web2. And Mental, an Ethereum layer 2 that built two products I particularly like. FBTC, which enables you to borrow and lend Bitcoin in DeFi, and METH or METH, one of the largest ETH liquid staking protocols in crypto. To support this show, please check the sponsors links in the description down below. You're telling me you're 5 minutes late and I saw you shitpost on Fartcoin, which you like to do.
Yeah, always working.
So Fartcoin is a part of the job.
Yeah, I think so.
Being a Fartcoin evangelist.
Yeah.
Except from being a Fartcoin evangelist, if you had to describe what it is you do and why you do it, what would you say?
Most of my day-to-day now is kind of talking to startup founders, some Solana mobile stuff, and then like managing some of the protocol changes, kind of L7 principal engineer. I don't actually have to do a lot of the design work anymore. I'm just kind of making sure the teams are aligned.
How much of your job is still technical?
So it's like about a third, I would say.
How much do you enjoy doing non-technical work? If you're an engineer,
the talking to startup founders is fun, but it can get tedious because like there's just a lot of them, and like myself in those early days, you're just bad at communicating your idea. Like it's just terrible. Like they're all,
that's the feedback, guys.
Yeah, they're all bad.
Learn how to communicate. Damn it.
They're all bad. The ideas are not well formed. It's kind of very rough around the edges, but they're better than me than when I started. So like they have hope. They're not hopeless.
How do you learn that? Just learning by doing? Or did you do something?
This is literally just 1,000 meetings is kind of what you have to go through.
Who are you?
Co-founder of Solana. It's mediocre snowboarder.
You're the co-founder of Solana Labs?
Yeah.
The company behind Solana. How do you come up with a big idea?
I've always been kind of coding on something on the side. When I went to school in Urbana-Champaign, I was at the startup. We were building Voiceover IP systems. This was like 99, 2000, pre-dot-com crash. And even after I graduated, ended up in San Diego, just every day I would like be working on something else besides my real job. So I always had something in the background, and I stumbled into crypto working on a side project building deep learning hardware. And this is like 2017 kind of pre transformer paper and stuff.
I read that you actually started to code when you were 5 years old.
No.
Is that correct?
No. In the USSR, there wasn't an opportunity.
I was thinking that. I was like, this is weird.
But there was a class that had some programming in BASIC. I kind of hated it in like 5th grade, and I switched to theater. It was like
How much do you like theater?
I like some of it. Not a fan of musicals, but like drama and stuff. Yeah.
So I mean, Destiny brought you to Silicon Valley, but you might have have gone a bit more south to Hollywood.
Yeah, no, I doubt it. Not as a professional.
How often do you get lost in your thoughts?
Depends how much coffee I have. I haven't drank coffee this year. This was one of my things that I wanted to change because I was at like 7 cups a day.
So the more you drink coffee, the more you get lost in your thoughts?
Yeah, it's different. You kind of get into like the loops are faster. If I'm not caffeinated, I actually do more thinking at a slower pace, and it's usually the results are better. Like I go on a bike ride, and while I'm, trying to climb a hill, I can actually think through a hard problem.
What's the moment you realize I need to stop caffeine or drink less coffee?
It just kind of goes in cycles. It's not like a permanent thing. It's just
I'm just going to remove that. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's fine.
I didn't want to do it. There's a common pattern across most of the very successful people who are interviewed on this podcast. They have a sort of childhood trauma or something that happened in their life that give them the fire in the belly that they have today and the hunger of success. What happened in your life that made you want to become successful?
I mean, I was born in the Soviet Union. So when I like kind of think back of how like, my life is challenging or I'm stressed, even before Solana or like in the worst part of the startup of it, I just think of my parents in the USSR raising kids, like making it work, then moving to the US in their 40s, learning a new language. And like, it's just, I can't conceive how much like sacrifice and work that took. And I'm like, in comparison, I feel like I'm lazy, like, no.
How much did you realize that as a kid, oh, my parents are going through a hard time, versus now as an adult, you're thinking, oh man, what I'm doing is nothing compared to what they had to do?
Yeah, I think I had to be like a fully formed adult, like 25, before I started thinking outside of myself and like, oh man, my parents must have had it really hard.
I read that unlike many kids, you never really care about fitting in. Where does that come from?
Fitting in?
Not caring, because usually kids, they kind of feel like, oh, I need to be the kid of the school, right? I need to be popular.
Yeah, I think as an immigrant, you kind of never have that choice to fit in. So you're always kind of practice being the misfit in some way. Because you move, right? You have an accent, you have a different name. So you kind of like become comfortable being a misfit.
How much did you feel about that?
I don't really think about it. I think there's always kind of, maybe being in the US, at least in the 90s. We moved to the States in the 90s, so I was 11. It's probably like a hard like transition for like a 11-year-old to kind of deal with that. But the US is big, and there's just like a group of people that is more like you, like somewhere. It's not monoculture anywhere, I would say, in the United States.
Yeah, so you just go and you find your tribe.
Yeah, exactly.
Dear When Shift Happens family, the following message is probably the single most important thing you should take away from today's podcast. If you're serious about your crypto investing journey, please take some time to learn how to self-custody your assets to make sure that nobody can take your coins away. ever. If you don't learn how to be your own bank, it is very likely that one day you will lose all your hard-earned crypto. The safest way to hold your crypto is in a cold storage that we also call hardware wallet. Hardware wallets are not complicated and they give you peace of mind. I personally use a hardware wallet called Trezor. It is open source, very easy to use, and the first hardware wallet created ever. As we like to say it in crypto, not your keys, not your coin. You can order your Trezor wallet with a 10% discount by following the link in the description down below and by using the promo code WSH10. And now, back to the episode.
You moved, you said, in the 90s to the US. How much would reaching even 1/10 of what you've achieved would have been possible had you not moved to the US and specifically to Silicon Valley or San Francisco?
Yeah, zero. Like, I think, yeah, knock on wood, man. I'm so grateful to be here. My parents moved here, yeah.
So it was random that your parents moved to San Francisco? Or you lived somewhere else before?
We landed in Chicago, so I grew up in Chicago. I was always like, nerdy, interested in computers. Started programming around 16, so I was in high school. We had a physics teacher that taught basic programming class in C. And I kind of had like my first Eureka moment where we were building this cheesy Tron game where, you have a line that you can't cross the other line, like as you control it. But we had to build an algorithm to automatically control it, like an AI, right? A bot. And I had this like Eureka moment to build like a greedy algorithm. I didn't know how to describe any of this, to code it up in a way that beat everyone else that had more systems that were trying to like do a systematic way to go attack you. Mine was just reactive and greedy, and it won, like beat everyone. And I kind of had this like my first Eureka moment of finding like a nugget that was very clever and small and short and sweet.
And this is what made you like computer science more, which you didn't like before?
I mean, I was always interested in it, but that was when I think kind of really got into it.
And it's shortly after that you started this voiceover IP
That was
startup.
a few years later when I got to college. The advantage that I had was that I kind of jumped into real programming when I joined that startup, and we were dealing with physical phone cards and flakiness of hardware and that kind of stuff that takes a few years to get to typically when you're starting as a student, because they try to like teach you the algorithms and kind of the abstract things and in an environment where you don't have to deal with the real world, which is flaky and fails all the time. And you actually you miss a lot of how that works. But I had the opportunity to learn that early. And one, it like teaches you that it is really just very, very dumb, like a light switch, just a bajillion light switches. And it's under the hood, it's just, electrical signals and basically switches and stuff. Which is very hard to get to if you're in like doing abstract data structures on top of Java for like 3 years in your undergrad. You don't actually see how you turn on an LED light, even like the basics like that.
Where does this nerdy side come from? Do you have a parent who is very technical?
Yeah, I mean, both my parents were engineers and so like it kind of, I think it's probably a bit genetic.
What happened to this voiceover IP?
Oh, it failed. So this was 99 to 2003. We built this system that, take a Linux box and you put these POTS POTS cards or whatever they were called that could plug into a regular phone line. And then you can control, like, you can set up like a whole automated voice system with different messages and kind of stuff that Google Voice does right now. An idea was to bootstrap it by selling these to like small businesses. Because they were, 10 times cheaper than kind of the service you get out of, traditional phone company like AT&T to go do all this stuff for you. But 2000, one is when the dot-com crashed, and like we were in central Illinois and just had no idea how to do the business side. If I had like been more ambitious, I kind of understood how Silicon Valley works. We could have just gone out here, Silicon Valley, and pitched building a global Google Voice. Like the thing that like the big difference in like I think software and starting a small business is your goal isn't to build like a company that is, you know, selling products and slowly growing. It's to build a service for the entire world all at the same time and onboard as many users and kind of win that thing for the world. Um, and thinking in that scale just takes a while. You have to see it like happen a couple times.
How did you learn that?
I mean,
How did you learn to go? Because that's the problem I have, and probably a lot of other entrepreneurs have. Like you're thinking, oh, I need to build this thing. It needs to be profitable. It needs to be a business, right? Make a profit, etc. But some people don't. I mean, the VCs they don't want to hear that. They want to hear the next mega thing, right? How do you go from
so you need
thinking
to be
small
both.
to thinking big?
You need to be both. You need to have a sense of how do I sell this and get to runway and extend my runway. Like effectively, every dollar that you sell is a dollar you don't have to raise. And you need to be kind of like, as a startup founder, you're a wounded animal. You have a lifespan. It's no more than 36 months. You're dead. Most startups have 18 months, right? You like raised about 24 months of runway, basically. But your vision and how you think of the product, I think, should be global. You're building a piece of technology that anybody in the world can use. So you're selling everybody in the world should be your customer effectively. It doesn't matter if they're in Japan or China or wherever, Africa. There's a way for them to use it through the internet. So you have to think in that global way.
So instead of going around Silicon Valley and knocking doors and selling this big vision for voice over IP, you decided to take a job.
Qualcomm was building voice over IP stuff, and they were using the same open source stack as we used. So it was basically hired at the spot because there's just very few engineers that ended up in that rabbit hole, and it was kind of an easy hire for them. And this was still 2003. It was pretty hard to get hired as a software engineer. My advisor was telling me that maybe software is not a good career choice.
I read about that actually.
Yeah, just kind of crazy. And
how did you react when we were told that? Did you even for 1 second hesitate, or just thinking, no, I'm just going to follow my gut. I don't care what these people are saying?
Yeah, I didn't hesitate because I was having fun programming already. And like the best advice you can get, like you have to work. You know, you're going to spend a big chunk of your life working, like, you know, 20 to 30% of it. So do something that you have fun at, because that's what's going to actually drive your success. If you're having fun, you get to master that task. And as you master it, you kind of level up. And it doesn't matter what it is. It could be drama artist at just doing plays or whatever, right? If you love it, you master it, and that's where your success comes from, is through that repeated, like constantly repeating and getting better and better. But I was already having fun. I was coding for fun, kind of constantly starting side projects. So I was hooked. And at that time, I only basically got 2 offers. One was in Chicago, one was in San Diego. And when I flew out to San Diego, I was like, California is the best place to be.
Mostly because of weather?
Yeah.
So you came here for the weather and stayed here for the...
Yeah, me and my
culture.
buddy, we would wake up, surf, bike to work, which is 18 miles, bike back. But we would run at work because we were by this awesome canyon, then bike back, then surf again, then go play underwater hockey. That was our day. And while we're doing this exercising, we were just, we always had like a side project that we were coding on, and we would just kind of shoot the shit. Maybe we'd do it this way, maybe we'd do it like this. So it was a mixture of just being, IC is just called an individual contributor if people don't know what that is. So like you don't have any management responsibilities. You get like a hard problem to work on at work, and you just, you know, pour your brain into it. But we were lucky enough to work at a place that was kind of, nobody like kept track of what if your butt was in the seat or not. Your managers trusted you and they care that you finished the work and did an excellent job. So I was able to like mix working out and work at the same time.
You mentioned the most important is to have fun, right?
Yeah.
You seem like you had a lot of fun beside the job, doing all these things, surfing,
Yeah.
running, working out. You were doing side projects that you mentioned also before, probably having a lot of fun. Did you have fun at your main job? Is it possible to have fun as an employee?
Yeah. Yeah, it was awesome. So the period of time where I was at Qualcomm, like mobile phones went through this like really crazy rapid evolution. It was faster than, people say Moore's law is twice as good every 2 years, but there was a design and process improvement, it felt like every year. So this is actually kind of a big part of my experience, is that I had to kind of think about writing software for the next generation hardware so I didn't have to rewrite it. So I was always thinking, are there like bottlenecks here that should be parallelized and things like that? You basically assume that next generation hardware is going to be twice as good. So you don't want to rewrite the software again. So you're trying to design for something that gets faster and faster.
You spent 13 years?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why?
One, because San Diego's awesome. So weather's unbeatable.
I love it.
Yeah.
Simple things.
Yeah. And like I was an Ironman. Like I was working out at a level where I could like do an Ironman triathlon and still like mess around on whatever side project I wanted.
Have you ever done an Ironman?
Yeah.
How was that experience?
I was slow. So I'm like a 13-hour Ironman for me. It's a very slow time.
What's the typical time that someone who is not slow would do?
I mean, I guess I'm probably around average for like non-professional. The pros do it in like, I think like 8 hours, I think sub 8 hours maybe at this point.
So you're not one of those who says, I want to basically be the best at everything, sport included, and then kill yourself.
No, actually, I don't care about being the best. I care about myself getting better.
Interesting.
There's no way for me to be the best because I'm not a professional, not like genetically gifted like the pros, right? So, but I can have fun and
Do you
get better.
think like that only in sport, or do you think like that in every area of your life? I don't care about being the best because I don't have that much control over competition. I care about getting better every day.
I like competing. So I like being in competition and being at like my limit. I like being like, the second to worst player in the team. It's a good spot.
Why?
Because it means you really have to push yourself, right? I don't want to be the worst because then I'm like bringing, like I feel like I'm dragging the team down and I shouldn't be there. But if I like made the team legitimately and I'm, not the best player, but like I'm pushing myself and kind of killing myself, it's a good feeling, right? You get to see everyone else get better and see what they're doing and learn.
And that's where also there is the most progress for you, obviously.
Yeah.
How did you get so fascinated by the world of crypto and the blockchain?
2008 crisis was like pretty crazy, like the financial crisis in the US and the banks seizing customer funds in Greece was like also pretty nuts because it's like wealth seizure, right? And that was very jarring to me because that was basically like you're at the whims of the state, like you are in the USSR. Part of my trauma got triggered.
Did you know someone personally who went through this experience in Greece? Or
No.
it's just you read and you're like, actually, there is always this thing where we might think, oh, this can only happen to others. Oh, this is Greece. Oh, this is Europe. We're the US, right? Hey,
but
this is different.
As the USSR fell apart, property rights vanished, right? So like my family literally had to give up the apartment that we lived in, like everything there to leave, right? So you didn't have this like sense of control of your life or like safety, right? So it was very triggering. It's like brought back all that trauma. I wish I channeled it into buying Bitcoin, but instead I just fucked around with like trying to see if I can make it faster or like build a better way to mine it. And it was already moving so fast that by the time I was like, oh, maybe I can build like a GPU miner. Somebody already shipped one. If I could build an FPGA one, somebody shipped one.
So this is early 2010s?
Yeah. Yeah. And there was this like Butterfly Labs or something. There was this ASIC company. So because I worked at a chip company, I was like very interested in like the hardware side of it. There was this Butterfly Labs that sold Bitcoin miners, and they like that was my first drug. They like took your pre-order and then they held on to the hardware for like took 6 months to ship it after they got it. So they used it to like use all the hash power advantage of the ASIC, and then they sent it to you. It's hilarious. So it was like useless.
Well, like a lot of things in this industry still today. How long did you fuck around trying to do some stuff with Bitcoin before realizing, man, this is much bigger than I thought?
I didn't get the social impact of it because, like, as an engineer, I was very skeptical of its ability to like actually scale to a global use case, and like, or that people would like buy it, because it was at that time like the people that were really into it were like the weirdos that were like way out there. So,
Did you go and meet some of these weirdos?
Yeah, I mean, I got introduced to it through like underwater hockey. There were a couple of people that were really into it, and underwater hockey.
They were too weirdo for you. You were like, man, I don't want to.
Underwater hockey itself is a weird sport that attracts a bunch of weirdos, right? So these guys were like on the outlier of that group.
Continue.
And like, I was aware of Ethereum, but not deeply aware. I kind of dismissed it also as like, oh, they're adding kind of this JavaScript to Bitcoin, which I thought.
How much did that make sense to you?
It didn't. The stuff really clicked when around like 2017, 2016, where smart contracts made a lot more sense. The kind of so I had a buddy of mine and I were building deep learning hardware. We're just taking GPUs, like these were gaming cards, and we were sticking them in boxes and putting them at Hurricane Electric, which is like a data center around here. And we were mining crypto in the background to pay for the GPUs. It's like seems obvious, right? And like we were messing around with deep learning, and this is before the Transformers paper, but this is when people figured out that you can kind of get these visual stacks to start hallucinating and doing some weird things.
This was a side hustle for you while you were at Dropbox.
Dropbox,
And so you start mining to pay for for this side hustle.
And I had like 2 coffees and a beer, and Ethereum started kind of gaining traction, and I had 2 coffees and a beer, and it's like didn't sit with me. And this was with my buddy that we were working on these deep learning things with, and we were talking about single-threaded mining, or like, why do we need proof of work? Like, why is it so necessary? And I had this like 4 a.m. Eureka moment that instead of tracking like energy or entropy, you could track time. So that there's a way to build a data structure that tracks time. And I didn't have like much beyond that, but I couldn't Google for it. Like I just didn't know how to describe it in a way that I could go find Dan Bonnet's papers on verifiable delay functions. So I thought that I had something really, really cool that nobody else had.
Was there anything out there that you couldn't find, but was there something else out there?
Yeah, verifiable delay functions. There's this cryptographic primitive that was pretty well known, and like Dan Bonnet, like out in Stanford, worked on a bunch. And there was also RSA time locks, so you could also do some of this effect with like just RSA encryption, and it's this thing called a time lock, which was pretty cool. But none of these things were just like in the industry yet. they were just papers, right? Just like some PhD somewhere was working on them.
Why had no one done anything about that yet?
Because I think 2017 is really when scaling became an important problem. And that's where you had like a ton of different scaling solutions. In fact, like I think Ethereum research started working on VDFs and stuff as part of their design. But for me, it was just really some dumb luck that I didn't find somebody smarter than me working in this, because I would have been like, oh, okay, I don't have much to add here because I'm not the expert, right? So I thought that I had enough kind of a unique approach that it was worthwhile for me to like go and pursue it. And my wife actually is the one that like really pushed me to take the leap. She was at Columbia when Facebook was just starting out, and she was working at a competitor, and it was this like kind of growth go to market fight between Facebook and I forget the Columbia one. And there's like a moment in like there's these kind of moments in Silicon Valley history where there is this new meta comes out, whether it's AI or crypto or social networks, and there's a whole rush of people trying to build companies around it. And you actually really do have about 6 months window to raise capital, get a team together, and then go have a shot at it. And if you wait too long, even if you have a great idea, it's just there's enough competitors out there that VCs have moved on. They're like, okay, I already have a portfolio company that I invested in, so I'm conflicted out, right? So then it's hard for them to take a swing at it. So you kind of have to actually like go for the gold rush, if you will, if you're really interested in it. So she kind of told me, I had, she's been married to me, so she knows my personality. So we have a kid.
What's your personality like?
Well, I had to, between child, job, and side project, I had to pick two. And the child is mandatory. So really only had to pick between the side project and the job. I couldn't do both because there's no way for me to like go to work, then come home after work, spend another 8 hours, right? Like, and ignore the family and everything.
So that's what made you start Solana. Your wife telling you, hey, listen,
Yeah.
you can pick 2 out of 3,
Yeah.
job, side hustle, or child, but child, basically child, no choice.
Yeah.
Job or side hustle.
Yeah. Yep.
Love it. How long did it, when she told you that, how long did it take you to say, okay, fuck the job, I'm gonna go
About
for the side hustle?
2 days, honestly. It was very fast. And then I was like, okay, like once I decide something, I move pretty quickly. And like what's funny is, the Dropbox people were like, hey, this happens all the time. If it fails in 6 months, you can just come back.
Which is true.
Which is like, I think why a lot of folks underestimate the huge benefit of being in the Bay Area. You just have so many companies that are constantly hiring good engineers. Like no matter what people tell you about like AI transforming software development, it is, but there's always room for like great engineers, like the knitting company, including Solana Labs. Like, so if you're a great engineer, reach out. Yeah.
No, but I spent a couple of weeks here. I told you before, interviewing a bunch of people, Brandon from Phantom, the Sui guys, and I just realized, if I take my phone, which is an iPhone, it was built here.
Yeah.
If I look at the 5 apps I use the most, they're all built here. Yeah. And then all these folks now, the previous Facebook, Twitter, etc., all building in crypto. It's incredible. And at the same time, it makes sense that everything comes from here. When you see, if everything comes from here, probably everything gonna come from here, because you can feel when you go to Sui offices. They say, we had the same office. We had the same office than we had at Facebook, right? They kind of take the culture, and you can lower this kind of fear of failure, as you said, because you can just go back to all these companies that are the big companies in the world. It's incredible.
Yeah, the freedom to fail here is very unique, and like it's very forgiving. So I don't think there's another place in the world. It is changing now. I think crypto itself, I think, has transformed how people can raise money and where they can kind of set up shop and build. But I think for the most part, Silicon Valley, like what actually I think is going to happen is you don't have an opportunity to build a second Silicon Valley. That's the internet and crypto. So like crypto itself is now the second Silicon Valley. And it's very hard to compete with both the existing physical Silicon Valley that's already established and now this internet-based one, which is kind of the crypto land. So I think those two are effectively going to prevent any other city or area from gaining any like repeatable traction.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because if you're here, you realize, I mean, yeah, you in New York, it's also big, etc. But we always think, oh, crypto is all this online thing. But I'm interviewing everyone from Silicon Valley, and they're all connected in 5 different fashion.
Yeah.
And this, whether it's an online thing or the new internet, like it's people working together, right? And you feel it. Basically, you feel the difference. It's kind of a no-brainer, just like being here. I'm realizing. You co-founded Solana Labs. What is Solana? If you had to explain it to your mom, your mom is an engineer. It doesn't count. If you had to explain to my mom, she's not an engineer.
It's a cheaper way to send money.
Mm.
So I can explain that part. Or if she is from Eastern Europe, then you can say it's money that the government can't steal from you. That's another way you can explain it.
You mentioned before, I had this kind of Eureka moment. I thought I was so smart. And because you kind of discovered this thing called proof of history.
Yeah. So
Can you explain that to a normal dude like me? I'm not technical.
Yeah. So the funny thing is I don't even think it's needed. This is the funny thing is, but the technical term is it's a verifiable delay function.
What does that mean?
So it's a way to like produce a piece of data that when you receive it, you can estimate how much time it took to generate it with some hard boundaries. So because you can say that like the fastest chip anyone could make is this fast, and there's no way to speed up the process that we used, like the algorithm, the math that was used to generate this data, you know that it took at least 10 milliseconds or 100 milliseconds. So then you can create a clock that nobody has control over, that everyone can agree on. And that was kind of the idea. And why you need a clock is basically, it's almost easier to explain it in like radio terms. So if you remember your physics, radio waves interfere with each other. That's why sometimes you have static when you're messing around with old school radio, that's analog, right? You have these knobs and stuff. If 2 towers transmit at the same time over the same frequency, those radio waves interfere. So the first protocol people built was called time division multiple access, where they give each tower a synchronized clock and they alternate by time. So tower A goes on second 1, tower B goes on second 2, and they just alternate. And there's no collision, and you can get up to 100% of channel utilization this way, meaning that in any given moment in time, there's no interference and somebody's transmitting signal. Make sense? Kind of like from a high level. Like if you and I talk at the same time, you get noise. Yeah. So we have to take turns. Yeah. So we need some protocol for that. And we can use a clock. And that means if you and I both have a clock, we don't have to talk to each other when we hand off the turns. I just know I always talk on minute 1. You always talk on the even minutes. I talk on the odd ones, right?
It's 2018. And you go out there with this new architecture and new way of doing blockchain, right? So how easy was it? I was talking with Steven from Arbitrum the other day, and he was saying, I mean, Ethereum was there, they're building this kind of layer 2, but even for them, coming up with a different approach was extremely hard to, I mean, he said because he had really good credentials on like the academic side, it was kind of not too hard to raise money, but to have people to even accept a new idea was very hard.
Yeah, that took a lot of work. Basically, people discounted us and didn't think it was going to work. And then, even if it works, does anybody need it, kind of thing. So that took a while, and also didn't understand the implication of it. And this is where I think people like going back to that example, right? If you and I have to take turns, we have to have some protocol to take a turn, right? You like say, I'm done. And then I say, okay, I see you're done. Now I'm going to talk. And this is what most blockchains are like. And because there's this like protocol between us taking turns, there's a gap in when actual data is transmitted, because it's now you're taking this time to go do this thing. So this idea of adding a clock and using 100% of the bandwidth, just people just didn't understand that was important. But that's what effectively allows the chain to scale with hardware. And we've seen now, like I think there's been better consensus protocols and stuff that can achieve similar effect without the need of proof history and just in a simpler way. And like the industry has gotten to understand that that's really, really important. So that's been kind of the name of scaling. It's like, how do I utilize hardware 100% of the time without any of these gaps or like inefficiencies? Because once you do that, then you're done, and you can, a year from now, you're going to have better chips, better networks. And that's kind of like, going back to my Qualcomm days, that's when I knew I was done, is if I can write the software such that next year the hardware just makes it run faster. There were people that got it, and that's the reason why they invested. And there were a bunch of people that didn't get it and dismissed it. But I'd expect every idea that's kind of worth pursuing to be on that edge. And what I've heard people describe it as, like, what you want to be working on is like black licorice. I don't know if you ever had it. It's a candy that like 95% of people don't like. So it's got this like weird medicinal taste. So if you build something that everybody likes, it's too generic and kind of boring, and there's already too much competition for that. But if you build black licorice, you get a niche of people that are like, oh man, I've never had this before. It's great. And that's your nugget. That's where you start with. And if you're lucky, you change the market and the landscape, because you were so right that it now shifts and that becomes the more dominant thing. But it's hard to predict, right? Like nobody knows what that happens. But if you build for like the majority of people's kind of opinions, it's very unlikely that you'll discover that.
The reason you got into crypto and that Bitcoin interested you, I mean, you're an engineer, so there is definitely the engineering side, but probably also you saw the price moving. That's what attracted a lot of people initially.
Well, if the price didn't move, we couldn't then pay for the GPUs. It's
Absolutely.
Kind of so what really like I think kind of pushed me over the line was that Ethereum scaling issues were very familiar to me, because you have this single computer that's replicated, so you can't speed it up easily. So and you're trying to make everybody in the world, trying to get everyone in the world to use it. So it's a very resource constrained environment. And I spent 10 years, 13 years working on like embedded systems where every byte and memory allocation counts. So looking at like Ethereum's design and like this idea that, we can use 100% of the bandwidth, my like back of the envelope paper math was like, it's going to be 1,000 times faster. So there was like a product that I understood, which is software that people run on a computer, smart contracts, and it's very resource constrained, a problem that I knew how to solve. And I had a solution that was on paper 1,000 times better. So to me, it was kind of a no-brainer to go take a swing at it.
This weird thing in crypto where, because you said before, we have this new approach. Some people will not believe in us, 95%, 5 people will 5% will believe in us, will invest, then we're building, right? But you build, but you don't know. I mean, deep inside, you know that you believe in yourself, right? But you don't know if this is going to get any adoption. And then there's this very weird thing, which is a token that has a price that is moving a lot, right? And that people, when the price goes up or goes up a lot, people will think a certain way about your protocol or your project while you are building this thing that you hope gets real traction, which is not just a price of a token moving, right? So you 2018, 19, 20, you're fully locked in, you build your protocol, and then the price goes up like crazy.
Well, that happened way after. It was 21 at least, and the kind of end of 20.
How is that linked?
Yeah.
How is that linked to you being locked in every day and building Solana that the price does whatever?
So like
500x.
Yeah.
And how do you stay locked in when this happens? Because probably it messes with your mind.
For whatever reason, like myself and Raj and all the founders were like pretty skeptical of the price. So what we cared about, like, do we have enough runway to support the engineers and keep building? That was the important part. And then the price itself was like, I don't know if it's real. If it went up 500x in whatever X many months, it can go down 500x in X many months. Like at least I've been like trading long enough in like real markets where you know that it's actually easier to go down, right? And when we launched like mainnet, it was literally like we decided, okay, we got it to work. The network was stable for like weeks. That was our signal. We got like 2 weeks with no downtime. We were running out of money. We had like 9 months of runway left. And it was basically do or die. And we said, okay, we're going to launch. And 2 days after we announced we're going to have this, like, we're going to launch, both Bitcoin and the normal markets dropped like 70% because of COVID. So you have this like, oh man, we called our, like, the investors that we talked to were like, we don't know what's going to happen. They're like, we don't know if the fund is going to be active in like a couple of weeks. So you guys, like, you're on your own.
I had Tushar on the podcast and we talked about that moment. And he said that one of the biggest mistake they've done is they didn't wait out, the crash. They actually kind of panic sold and then like got back in. So even them were massive believers. I mean, I don't know, like, but they were massive believers and very successful at what they do. Obviously, you have this very, very weird moment where no one knows what the fuck happened. And you might think like it could be the end of the industry.
Yeah. So like when I tell founders that have tokens is that the only runway that's real is treasuries, not even cash in a bank. Because as that 4 years unraveled, these some banking failures. So if you have treasuries and treasurydirect.gov, that's real cash in the bank that you know isn't going to disappear. And this is what you can count on as runway. Everything else you have to kind of think of as a hot wallet, right? So you have 3 months that is what you're risking at a bank, and that bank could fail.
So that's what you're doing. You say we have 3 months in the bank, all the rest is in treasury.
Yeah, and this is what my advice to founders, to not pay attention to the token price, but like really care about their runway.
Is it the common practice in Silicon Valley to have 3 months of cash and then the rest in treasury?
It is now, because Silicon Valley Bank failed. I think people are far more careful now and far more serious. At least I hope the investors are telling their founders to like pay attention to banking failure risk, because it's real. So yeah, we never for whatever reason, we maybe through the trauma that we shared through building Solana and the ups and downs, we just don't assume the token is going to be anything. It might be worth, nothing tomorrow. It might be doing great. Who knows?
Whatever goes up too quickly must come back down. That's the rule.
That's the typical rule. But over the long term, the very long term, right? The market does weigh quality, right? Over the short term, it's who knows, right? But and for founders to succeed in an open market, they need to go focus on quality over a very long period of time. So usually if you're going to get product market fit, you're not going to get it right away. You have to kind of be early enough to grind and iterate and like really suffer through years of finding like your power users and finding that nugget that works. And then you kind of get lucky that you were early enough at the right thing and the market rapidly expands and you benefit from the 3 years of grinding during that expansion.
Napoleon Bonaparte said, "My downfall raises me to infinite heights." You went from zero in 2018 to hero in 2021 to being ridiculed and even hated in 2022 when FTX, which had a big affiliation with Solana, collapsed. If I was a fly on the wall in your living room or in your office between the 2nd and the 12th of November 2022 when FTX collapsed, what would I have seen?
So I was really worried about the founder. Like by that time, there was a really good group of founders who were building on the network and they were raising money and they had like kind of this long pipeline of products in development. I was terrified that they all had their funds in FTX because the catastrophe would have been that FTX collapsed and the entire ecosystem's runway is now dead. And luckily, it was actually a pretty small percentage, but some really great founders got totally screwed, like Armani, Backpack. They just raised a big round. They kept all their funds on FTX, and it was effectively locked. The crazy kind of upside from that was that they couldn't hire, so they had small amount of runway left. They had to keep their team small, and they were just worked harder. And like they really just did everything they could to like go dig themselves out of that hole. And they meant launching MadLads, which I think that was a turning point, like in that 6 or 7 months where things seemed really, really dark, outside of Vitalik's tweet. You know, people credit it to saving Solana, and I'm like 50-50. If the time
That's the next question.
if the time ever comes that I can lend a hand to Ethereum,
that's my next question.
Yeah, I absolutely will. I think he's a gem and like awesome founder, and I think truly like an example to follow. But that I think Backpack and building MadLads and kind of jump starting the NFT community and kind of product cycle like really, really shifted everything.
How do you deal with FUD on a personal level when all the haters come out to celebrate your downfall?
So
like you're now like
Yeah.
just laughing. I don't think so.
I landed in the States in 92. My parents got me a computer and I was like on RC chats like throughout like basically my adolescence and like since then. So I was born in the FUD. It was just like
I was born in the FUD.
So to me, it's just like just part of the sparring online is you're just kind of in this shit show, like constantly fighting people. That's kind of fun. It's almost fun. I would say it is like one of the fun parts. Is like being able to argue with anyone on the internet about these random things. So in a way, like that part never bothered me.
Some smart people tell me there is an earnest smart developer community in Solana. And now that the awful opportunistic money people have been washed out, the chain has a bright future. Hard for me to tell from the outside, but I hope the community gets its fair chance to thrive. This is a tweet from Vitalik Buterin, the co-founder of Ethereum, on December 29th, 2022, about 1 month after the FTX collapse. You said before, I mean, my question is how much impact did this simple tweet have on the Solana ecosystem? You said 50-50.
It made me feel like not alone, right? Like that there is people in crypto that actually care about what we're working on and building. And that's kind of like always been true behind the scenes. Like actually I respect the Ethereum core devs a lot. They're awesome. They're doing really good work. And I think I can't think of one that I have a bad relationship with. even like Justin Drake, we will argue on podcasts or whatever, but I think he's awesome. And we talked about verifiable delay functions or whatever for years and stuff. So I don't, it was awesome to see it publicly, and like, I think really helped.
Ethereum is in a bit of trouble lately, and they have a lot of internal questions. How much do you feel? I mean, it's not as obviously not as bad as what happened 2 years ago. But how much do you feel like personally you did you tweet something? Did you say something? Or you feel like it's not your place to come and say, "Hey guys, look, like we've been in a dark moment or in a difficult moment," and
I think
Vitalik came like, "Now is my turn to go and."
I think
and tell these
Ethereum's
guys it's gonna be
actually
good.
fine. The fact that people are arguing and that Ethereum itself responds to that argument and changes means that it's going to be fine.
Good, yeah.
So like it's a painful process, right? To like shift direction or shift, architecture and stuff like that. And it's hard to do that when you have a $250 billion or $300 billion asset. Like the bigger the asset, the harder it is to do it. But like Bitcoin is completely frozen, so it cannot change. And this is probably, to me, the riskier part, is being completely like, what do they call it? Ossified.
So you think Bitcoin is more at risk than Ethereum just by the mere fact that it can't really be changed?
Unless they got really lucky and just nailed the use case so perfectly, which is possible.
Interesting.
Like,
Makes a lot of sense.
yeah, like I
Makes a lot of
don't
sense.
I don't think you need to be more. I don't think you need any more technology to build a digital gold. Like if that's the use case that has real like global product market fit, Bitcoin's already there and doesn't need change. But I think smart contract platforms are just more amorphous. They're harder to pin down. The requirements are much larger, so they need to be, I think, more mutable. And I think Ethereum is going to change and will probably be fine. Like it's got a bunch of really smart people working on it.
Absolutely. I'm actually interviewing many of them on this podcast, and that's when I realized these guys are another level for sure. Our greatest glory is not in never falling, but in raising every time we fall. This is a
Sure.
quote from Nelson Mandela. Solana went from a near-death event in late 2022 to one of the most flourishing and used blockchain within barely 2 years. What are the key elements that had to come together at the same moment for this to happen?
We had to have built a product that was differentiated enough, black licorice, that there was a core group that loved it. And I didn't have this as like a grand strategy or anything. A lot of it was necessity. Like we raised a small amount of funds relative to our competitors. Like I think altogether pre-launch we raised like $22 or $23 million. Which sounds like a lot, but engineers are expensive, and that was not a ton of money compared to like 100 mil or whatever that Hedera raised, or 100 that Avalanche raised, and all these kind of competitors had enough funding to, I think, build a much bigger feature set, which actually prevented them from building black licorice, like finding that nugget that people would choose over anything else because it solved a core problem for them. So I didn't have enough funding to build EVM support, which is kind of the obvious thing. All the developers are using EVM. So why, if you're building a blockchain, you need to have EVM support. But the cost of making EVM fast is very, very huge. Like Monad spent like 3 or 4 years, like bajillion dollars in development to optimize it. So we didn't have that. So I knew how to build fast virtual machines because I've spent my career working on virtual machines. So we built one that we knew could showcase that the network is going to be really, really fast. And even though it was awkward to program, like we initially just had support for C, which is kind of a very low level language, and then Rust, which is not a standard smart contract language, but is becoming more so now. But basically, we kind of went into our own little territory and we built something that was truly differentiated. It was cheap, it was fast, it could handle a large concurrent load of a lot of users and use cases, even though there were a ton of bugs along the way. Like we basically had, like, the joke is I have this like 8 innovations kind of articles that I've published. What are the 8 optimizations we did? Each one of them could have been the 8 bugs that we had that all bit us in the butt at one point or another, but not all at the same time, luckily.
Yeah, I had Brandon sitting exactly where you're sitting from Phantom, and I asked him what's one of the reasons they built on Solana, and he said because I just sat down with Tolly and Raj, and they never kid themselves about having everything figured out.
Yeah.
It's very practical, right?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
in opposition to very theoretical. It's a very practical Silicon Valley tech approach.
I wouldn't even call it Silicon Valley tech. It's just very engineering minded. We had a specific set of problems we wanted to solve.
What was the inflection point or key moment in the last 2 years that changed the game for Solana?
I think my stress level started to kind of reduce around the MadLads launch. And this is after kind of I think that previous cycle was very stressful because things were just growing so quickly that and constant bugs and congestion and all this stuff. But finally around kind of, was it summer 3 years ago at this point, there was the Helium blockchain. They moved to Solana, and MadLads launched on the same day. And the priority localized fee markets, all this stuff worked. Like, it wasn't perfect. And there were a bunch of bug fixes since then, but like, these things worked well enough to where it was obvious to me, okay, it's going to be a bunch of work to fix these bugs, but the design is good and we can actually handle a bunch of stuff concurrently. And the community wasn't dead. Like, the MadLads thing was like very well received and like blew the records on NFT volumes and stuff. So it seemed like there were users, there was content, there were product developers, all the stuff was like actually working without a ton of support from me or from anyone else. And then I think for whatever reason, like, things really picked up. I think probably because of kind of the products they've been building for the 2 years prior were mature enough to then launch tokens and do full integrations, and kind of the ecosystem exploded.
I had Mert, one of the 2 best customer support officers
Yeah.
or reply guys at Solana. He's actually the one who made this happen. Shout out, Mert. You're obviously the other top customer support officer at Solana. Why should every founder CEO be the customer support officer?
I think I think you always should talk to the users because you kind of need to know their pain points. Like, the way I hired and my philosophy in like early stage company development was that I could build the whole product myself. So if I had enough time, I could have coded up all of Solana. But I had to move faster than that. That's where you raise money, because you have this window to actually execute on. So when I hired somebody, it would be to give them a task that I'm working on. I'm working on it because it's important, so it's high priority. Since I'm already working on it, I know how to do it, so I can evaluate if they do a good job or not. And when I'm doing this stuff, I talk to the users who I'm like building this for, right? So in fact, I encourage all the kind of engineers to work openly in Discord with the validators. So when we release code that like falls apart or doesn't do something, the validators can literally yell at the engineer that wrote that line of code. And that iteration cycle can be faster and faster. So you need that like customer service energy, I think, as part of early product development. And I kind of never gave that up. I think it's important to always talk to your users. Because I still feel like, even though I do no longer have commit privileges. I haven't for a couple of years on the main repo. I still feel like if there's a bug that somebody yells at me, I could go fix it. I can't force push anything anymore.
We just talk about what a founder CEO should do. What should a founder CEO not do?
Yeah, I think hiring well is probably the most important thing. And then to me, that starts with being able to build the whole product. So like, um, I think it sucks if there's only a single founder. You need like a couple co-founders, but usually there's like two that matter, that kind of really drive everything. And one of them needs to be able to build the whole thing. Like I think it's a red flag if there's a team where a single, like one of the founders can't say, I can build the whole thing myself.
I was talking many years ago when I started my first company with the co-founder CEO of, founder CEO of Checkout.com, which is a sort of Stripe competitor. And he was actually telling me exactly that. He was like, you need to dominate your company. Is another way to say that, right? You need to understand everything from A to Z about your company. Otherwise, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
He was actually a solo founder. But yeah.
Solo's hard. It's too lonely. That's why I wouldn't recommend it. I think there's other, I mean, some people can do it, but it's a lonely job.
How do you find a great co-founder?
It's dumb luck.
I love the honesty.
Yeah.
Dumb luck have to happen a few times in your life.
I basically like quit my job, and my wife is like working and supporting us, and there's no way I'm gonna just let that happen forever, right? So I gave myself 6 months, and that meant moving as fast as possible during that 6 months. So I got introduced to Raj through a friend of mine, and I was just like, you're just gonna do all this. Like, it was just trust.
Without knowing each other.
Yeah, well, we met briefly before, and the person that connected us is like a really good friend of mine whose judgment I trusted. So that was a very like kind of like very, if it wasn't for him introducing me, I would have ignored it, right? Like, and I pulled my friends in that I've worked with, played sports together with, so I trusted them. I trusted that I could redline them. This was kind of the reason I pulled my friends in. The specific friends that I pulled was because I knew that I could put a lot of pressure on them and they wouldn't crack. And the kind of pressure that you can't really ask out of an employee. Like, so you like the co-founders, you can like put a lot of pressure on.
Because your wife says we have a child, you need to take care of the child. And then you choose between your job or your side hustle. Then you say, I go for a side hustle. And then she supports you for 6 months financially while you start. Amazing. You said, I didn't have this master plan or strategy, right? In the last 2-3 years, things happen, right? How did this meme coin thing started to happen and become so big on Solana? Started with the first big meme coin moment, if I remember well, was Bonk. How does that happen?
Yeah. Again, no, like I've heard about Bonk when it launched. So it was truly out of that NFT community that like was kind of, that was more like, so the NFTs kind of started more, I would say, it's not strategically, but it was at least reactive. Like NFTs were blowing up on Ethereum, and people were asking us, why don't you guys have NFT support or whatever? And Bartosz and Jordan, these two engineers that really good product builders, basically built out the NFT standards in like 48 hours and just launched them. And these are open source standards that anyone could use. And they did a good enough job where users, like creators, could like self-launch and do their own thing. That's always been our philosophy, is just unblock the creator, the dev, to just go do JavaScript. Like, you don't have to mess with smart contracts, and go launch it on their own. And I think that created this culture of like kind of people experimenting and launching NFTs, and a bunch of stuff broke and there was congestion and all sorts of things. But the people were still there. So despite the FTX crash and like all this other shit that happened, that's that same group of people that have had experience launching NFTs and stuff, they just decided to go launch Bonk. And I think because the users were there and the ecosystem was in this like relative, low point, it was starving for something new. and it was new and fun and kind of innocent, and it was like a fair launch. So it was just kind of took off. Like usually what's weird with crypto is that you have a bunch of kind of people that experiment and mess around with things, and they're just launching stuff for fun, and they get a hit. Something works and it catches virality and it becomes huge. And then people are like, I want to replicate that. And then it like spirals into like, oh, I see people are making money there. Not only am I going to replicate it, I'm going to like find a way to maximally extract dollars out of it. And that's when the meta dies. So the bonk was like in that early stage where people just having fun, and it caught fire.
I have to ask because, as I said in the beginning of this podcast, when you were on your way here, you just tweeted "Fartcoin coded." You also tweeted, "I just want to go on record that I was the first to call for Fartcoin strategic reserve." What's the deal with Fartcoin?
I just think it's funny. It's just so stupid and dumb. Whatever.
That's what works. That's what works.
Exactly.
That's what people like. They want entertainment and stupidity, right?
Yeah. It's absurd, which makes it funny, and I think kind of like takes away. There's too many people that are way too serious in the space. So like to see something absurd succeed, it like makes the world more enjoyable.
We talked about Bonk. One of the really cool things about Bonk is that it was airdropped to people. It was airdropped to people who bought something called the Solana mobile phone, and the airdrop at some point covered the phone's costs.
Yeah,
which made people even more crazy about the whole meme coin thing. So the phone was essentially free, at least at a moment in time.
Yeah, yeah. The phone thing was like also kind of a. People made fun of it and called it a bull market idea.
Why? My question is, why would the company behind one of the fastest growing blockchain networks, Solana, launch a mobile phone?
Well, Labs is like a place to go like build companies and startups, and then they get spun out. Like Metaplex, the whole NFT standard, that was one. And there are founders that join Labs and then get hooked on something, and then they go build their own company. So that kind of happens all the time. But mobile was like my baby, and it's because I work at Qualcomm for such a long time, and it kind of as soon as I started taking crypto seriously, my like kind of instinct was like there is a whole stack for secure element and trusted display embedded in these chips that was developed like 10 years ago at this point, for making cryptographic signatures be as secure as a ledger. So all this technology is available in your phone. There's no reason not to surface it. It's just there's not enough demand or adoption or like whatever happening in the normal kind of financial industry to where crypto is accepted yet. So my thought was that there is an opportunity to make something better for users, so a more secure, kind of slicker signing experience, and an opportunity to make something for developers, which is, get rid of the 30% fees. You have a crypto-friendly app store. That was the thing. And like the phone is like, this is the tricorder from Star Trek. This is the coolest piece of technology anyone's ever made. It's a whole computer in your hand that's connected to the entire world.
Which means also it's extremely hard to disrupt.
Yeah.
If you have one big winner in the Web 2 world, right, in the normal world, or two big winners, it's very hard to disrupt.
So
my question is, I am a Web 3 user and lover. I'm not a degen. I buy a new iPhone every 2 to 3 years.
So do I.
Exactly. You have an iPhone. Why should I, or why should you? And you say, this is your baby, right? Why should I, why should you not buy an iPhone this year and get ourselves a Solana Seeker, which you called the definitive Web3 mobile device?
So there's people that are like so plugged into the iPhone ecosystem that they can't switch. Part of that is because a lot of the, at least corporate security is all set up around iPhones. So you kind of, if you have like a job that has security, like managed software, you're probably stuck in an iPhone. Some support Android, but most of them actually recommend iPhones. But you can get a second device. So that could be your NFT crypto phone, and you should have separation between those two because one is financial, one is not. But a large part of the world is not stuck in iPhone land. And 80% of the mobile sales actually are outside of the US. So only 20% of the sales happen in the US. So like the rest of the world is actually much more friendly. You're not like banned from dating apps if you have a green bubble. Like for most of the rest of the world, Android it works well. And what I see is like right now there's this, like I think if you waited too long, Apple and Google will eventually add crypto support because I think kind of crypto adoption is inevitable. But until they add it natively, it's an opportunity to kind of create a wedge and onboard a bunch of crypto users to a new platform. And if right now Seeker is at like about 150,000 pre-orders, and that's very like it's a sizable developer ecosystem. But if it gets to like 1 million plus, then I think it's long-term sustainable. And then it would be hard to actually disrupt that.
So it's basically, if you're a crypto user and you want to have a much more secure phone, get that as a second phone where you do all your crypto stuff on, and you are much less likely to get hacked or to lose your crypto.
You should use it, yeah, for hot wallets especially. Like for cold storage, I would recommend you use a hardware wallet or like a combination of, if you really geek out on it, use 3 different hardware wallets, squads, multi-sig, then you have redundancy across a bunch of stuff. Cold storage is separate, right? Like you should always have a cold and hot separation. But for hot wallets, you're still under kind of this constant threat vector. Every time you sign something, it could be a malicious transaction. The app store model, like why are apps more secure than like websites, is that there's moderation and curation, and that reduces a whole bunch of threat vectors. The single key phrase that is managed by the seed vault and not re-entered between all these applications, that's another way to reduce a whole bunch of threat vectors. So like,
You mentioned Seed Vault. The Solana Seeker has something called Seed Vault, which is powered by the crypto wallet Solflare. What the hell is Seed Vault, and what is Solflare doing in this equation?
so when you look at like mobile crypto apps right now, there's this weird tension between the app wanting to have great user experience and asking users to create an in-app wallet that's specific to the app. And your standard wallet, like Phantom or whatever, that's your central wallet, and then having to switch between the two. So having to cross applications, all this stuff. Or God forbid, people take the seed phrase that they use in Phantom and enter it in the app as well. So now they've risked their entire crypto portfolio that's in Phantom to this application. Don't do that. Do not share your seed phrase between apps or wallets. So the seed vault is this piece attack that keeps that seed phrase secure, but the wallet can be shared between applications. So you're not dealing with this kind of thing. So the goal is to have like the first Saga device has this implemented. The UX is clunky, and there's a bunch of work that's done in Seeker to make it more like Apple Pay. So you literally, like when you sign, kind of looks and feels like Apple Pay.
What's the role of Solflare in that?
They're an awesome wallet company that the mobile guys thought was like the best to partner with. So they're providing the technology and kind of the deep integration.
What's the end goal with the Solana Mobile?
To disrupt the duopoly. So
That's a good one.
I think like that would be a massive success. A single participant can, like even a small one, can change the market equilibrium. So right now, Apple and Google are not competing hard enough to where they're like really trying to bring down costs for developers. They're in this, they're all sitting very comfortable taking a 30% fee. When people talk about crypto disrupting a bank that takes 50 basis points, 30% is 3,000 basis points. A lot. I mean, the goal with mobile is obviously to succeed as a phone company, and it's hard. And like when we sold 20,000 phones, I didn't see a path to sell to 1 million, but I saw a path to sell 150,000 units. And now that we sold 150,000 units, there is a path to sell to 1 million, but I don't know how the hell we're going to sell 10 million units. But you just do it one step at a time.
What does accelerating mean?
Increasing velocity.
I'm just thinking like the public here is like a normal people, right? I'm trying to get a lot of people who are non-crypto people, not like the crypto Twitter echo chamber. And we do that through YouTube, right? Where there's like, I don't know, 2 billion people that we have potential reach. You see all these people talking about acceleration. Tech
it's
already,
moving
right?
faster. It's like making decisions faster, making those like being in that moment where you're talking to your spouse, should I start this company or not?
2 days later, boom.
2 days later,
Done.
you just go for it, right? You sleep on it, feels the decision sits well with you, and you just go for it. And you execute and take action. So having agency and taking action is what I kind of think of it.
Why do the Solana folks talk and love acceleration so much?
Founding a company and building a product and launching it and getting users, it's a whole bunch of little decisions that people can just not take and delay. And avoiding like getting into that moment where you have to make that decision and making it and like taking action is necessary. You have to do this a bunch of times to actually ship. So we want people to go like take the first step, take the second step, and like reduce that time between these decisions and just go for it.
One of the biggest arguments of the Solana detractors is that it's a casino chain, and that without meme coins, Solana is nothing. We just talked about Solana Mobile. What are some of the other big things being built on Solana that you're proud of and that have a solid traction?
Yeah, deepen. So this is like kind of again, people totally discounted this and thought it was dumb. And this is something that I focused on, I think uniquely out of most crypto ecosystems. I don't think anyone really paid attention to deepen, but maybe because again, I spent a career in embedded systems and hardware. It just seems so obvious. So Helium is a really prime example. There's also XNet. And both of these projects are working on building a decentralized 5G carrier. So it's why could a 5G carrier even succeed is very much related to physics. So like 4G towers have like a 30-40 kilometer range. 5G towers have like a 300-400 meter range. So it's dramatically smaller. You need a much wider deployment of these things. And to go build a tower for like a big company like Verizon, it's a lot more work than for a user, like somebody at home that's like, I'm going to get this 5G cell, stick it in my apartment, just put the antenna out the window, and now I'm providing coverage. So there is this like opportunity to crowdfund stuff in the hardware space that's really kind of hard to for big companies to compete simply because they're slower. So as soon as I actually interviewed at Helium, ironically enough, well, before Dropbox, it was like one of the companies that I thought joining. One of their CTO, Mark, was somebody that I worked with at Qualcomm for like a long time. Super brilliant guy. So it just made sense to me. And I spent a lot of time recruiting, like every blockchain is good for deepen. This is like the thing is most of the blockchain work with deepen happens outside of the blockchain. The only thing that the chain is tracking is like, each hotspot is an NFT. That's kind of how you think of it. So getting these folks on board just took them convincing that A, you don't need to build your own chain. This is what I can go spend all my time on. And 2, I think what you're doing is really freaking cool. That was it. And it's awesome to see, I think Helium's at like 300,000 users now. Like users that are using cellular network competing with Verizon, basically. XNet is another one that's in that space. Another one is called Hive Mapper. So if you ever used Google Street View, like all the camera, kind of those cars that take pictures of all the roads and stuff and cameras, they actually built a decentralized version of that. I think they're at like 20 or 25% of the world's roads covered. And their fidelity, like their data is actually in some cases like 200 times faster than Google. So because they built these cameras that are designed for taking these photos, they give them to drivers that are, the Uber driver, the whatever, the Dasher, whoever else. And there's all these apps exist globally now. It's really, really cool. They stick them on their scooter and their car, and they're constantly getting you an updated version of the street as they're doing their job and receiving tokens. And Google can't build that out. They can't build that fleet out, which is, I think, unique and cool. And like if you paid cash for this is kind of, I think, the difference. Like why Deepin works is if you just gave people money, the dollar value themselves would be kind of insignificant to excite somebody to do it. But getting a token is like is more fun and kind of feels more invested into the ecosystem.
When people say that Solana is just for meme coins, do you have the same? I mean, it's kind of like this. Do you have the same like? It's the fun side of your job. You mentioned before,
FUD,
man,
fighting FUD.
Yeah, this is the same fun for you. Like, oh man, just another round of FUD.
Yeah, it's like.
Or is there a moment at which you get kind of tired of people? Every time there is an opportunity to come, they just come back.
What is the coolest app on the iPhone for you that you can't live without?
Twitter and WhatsApp.
Yeah.
And Telegram.
How much all those applications?
Probably spend more time on Twitter.
Yeah. Take all those applications combined with all the users, Apple makes almost $0 from that in the iOS App Store. The vast majority of the revenue comes from games. And the game started as literally the fart app, where you push a button and makes a fart sound on the iOS. That was one of the first games. In fact, Steve Jobs had to comment like, we don't need 20 fart apps in the iOS App Store. There were so many of them. But the $100 billion worth of like sales through iOS, most of that is mobile gaming and kind of silly, dumb, casual stuff. I think meme coins are kind of that silly, dumb, casual stuff that pays for the infrastructure for Deepin, for everything else.
What is Solana's biggest achievement to date?
I think we're still processing more transactions than basically all the other major chains and L2s combined per day. It's pretty crazy that like 5 years since launch, with everything being open source, our ideas all being totally open, anyone could go copy this thing. No one has really kind of been able to go fork Solana and compete with us.
What is Solana's biggest problem today?
Biggest problem? I'm always focused on, I have like a very narrow focus on growth. So I kind of think of one thing at a, like, it's hard for me. It's a very sprawling ecosystem and there's nothing I can do to like make it move faster, but I can focus on just mobile and try to get that to succeed. So it's hard for me to say what's like the biggest single problem. It's almost like once I'm focused on mobile, I don't care about the other problems. But
if you don't care about the other problems, who care about them?
Somebody.
Somebody who reports to you?
No, somebody, like most people, like Labs is very small. It's like 40 people. Most of it is working on mobile, and there's Solana Ventures. So Labs itself is very tiny. I haven't been at the foundation for like 3 years. I'm not on the board. I suck at management. I don't want to manage. So like, yeah.
When did you realize that you suck at management?
I always kind of knew that. So, yeah. And I hired people that could deal with a bad manager. That was...
You told them, hey, guys.
Yeah.
I'm a bad manager. Just be ready.
Just if I'm doing your job, if I'm doing your work, if I'm patching your code, you're doing a bad job. That's
That's what you tell them.
yeah.
Maybe I should tell that to people I work with, actually. If I'm doing your job, it's because you're doing a bad job.
Well, what's cool is that it's not me that even cares about this stuff, or even somebody that's at the foundation. Like the Or team, which built a proof of work coin on Solana, built what's probably going to be the replacement to Anchor, which is the toolkit that everybody uses in Solana. That wasn't built by the foundation labs; it was built by Armani at Backpack. So what you see is that like there are tons of problems. Development environment sucks. People are always complaining about like Anchor and version mismatch and all this other stuff, and like ton of problems that are like, all over the place. But there's somebody that cares about them, that's working on them, that doesn't report to me or to the foundation. This has, I think, been the biggest strength of the network.
What's the day that you can look back and say, we've made it with Solana?
I don't know. I still like. I think, as Mert said, if anyone that believes that Solana won it doesn't understand how technology or any of this stuff works. There's absolutely nothing given for free.
What's your personal definition of success?
When all the code that I wrote has been replaced.
How about life success?
Life.
What does success mean to you?
To me is when I'm like, second to worst guy on a team. That's when I'm succeeding. Is if I'm like able to compete and grow and get better. So like right now, being in the competition, in the running to like win it all, if there is a possibility to win it all, I think that is in itself success, and it's fun, and like I don't know what else I could be working on beyond that.
Are you happy?
Yeah.
What makes you happy?
Again, like I think it's the ability to like compete and change and improve. Like I'm happy being a crappy surfer if I can go and surf every day and get better. It's like I don't need to be the best surfer and then like not get any joy of getting better, right?
Do you still surf? Do you still do some sport?
Yeah, snowboarding, cycling, weightlifting are kind of my three major ones. Surfing is rough. Like SF Ocean Beach is like very fast break. So I've been out there a couple times, but I'm old now. I get slammed into the ground and I'm like, this is this is more dangerous than I want it to be.
The washing machine.
Yeah. That I don't mind. Getting like short, like 2-foot shore break and catching like a fast wave and just being too slow or too fast and just getting slammed right into the sand. That to me is like the dangerous part.
What's the worst advice you've ever received?
Shit, I don't remember. I don't know.
Too many bad advices
Yeah.
or too many good advices?
I'm bad at listening, I think. That's why I don't know if I'm a bad listener. I don't know if I've gotten like that much good or bad advice.
How do you deal with your wife if you're bad at listening? She abandoned. She's like,
I only there's a few people that I listen to.
how do you want to be remembered?
Just as an engineer, like I don't need any accolades or anything.
What's something you believe in that most people would not agree with?
I think the singularity is going to be really slow to get here. I think people kind of, or I don't know if this is most. There's too many people that believe that like we're on the cusp of like huge meteoric, like unbelievable growth of like science and everything else. I think it's going to be slow and a grind.
Why? Why do you think people think it's going to be so fast? And why do you think it's going to be slow?
Because they see the progress of AI and they think that it's very rapid. What I actually see is like how slow it is to get the exponential rate. Like you need the the cost of training and everything else is going up quadratically, but hardware is only improving 2x. So you kind of have these two things fighting each other. And I think it's also kind of part of, it's still exponential. It's just in a much longer timeline. And this is part of just human growth, is like the overhead of us talking to each other and communicating is quadratic.
This very practical approach again to, you can think like technology goes extremely fast, but humans are humans.
Yeah.
It slows down the whole thing, right?
But this is also just true of AI, and like it's true of simulating like atoms and all the really, really hard, gnarly problems where you have a lot of like a huge dynamic system. It's just really, really hard to simulate, and it's not, and you don't get twice as much out of it with twice as much hardware. So I think people are overly optimistic. So that could be one. Another one, I think, which means I don't think we're going to live forever. And I'm fine with that. There's like also this cult of like living forever. I think that's still probably quite far away. And for that reason too, I think aliens are pretty far away. The kind of the Fermi paradox, I don't think we'll see them, and definitely not in my lifetime.
You think they exist?
If they do, they're so far away that the probability of us like connecting is virtually zero.
The rational approach would be, if we exist, probably something else exists. But if you listen to Elon, he's actually saying there's zero proof that any alien exists, right? And
well, the probability of everything going right and right at around the same time as us going right for us, that's zero. Like, and it increases as you like look at the larger and larger universe and radius. But what does it matter to us if there's like intelligent life in another galaxy or on the other side of the Milky Way even? It's just too far away that like we'll never talk to each other, at least not in like any feasible lifetime. Like,
and we have enough problems to solve on this planet already.
I'm also very optimistic. I think we live in the best time possible. And like things are definitely getting better. They're absolutely better now, like almost on everything than 20 years ago, like across the board.
Thank you so much, Anatoly,
For sure.
doing that. That was awesome. Thank you for being so chill, laughing a lot. That was amazing. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.